Welcome to the Parenting with Grace and Grit podcast, where every week we discuss behavior and the top 3 strategies we, as behavior analysts, suggest to work on it.
Today, we're going to be talking about 3 simple strategies that you can do to make your evenings easier.
Yeah, we all know there's that rush after school and after work, and you're just trying to crank things out, get dinner on the table, get things cleaned up, homework done, and everything like that. But we also know that those are times when our little ones can throw some massive, epic tantrums. So we want to talk about a few things we can do to try to minimize that. And the first thing that's probably going to make the most difference for you is setting aside, 5 to 10 minutes of time for just one-on-one, one-on-two, one-on however many children there are time to be together and really give them some undivided attention where you're not trying to cook dinner, do anything else, because they haven't seen you all day. They miss you. I'm sure you miss them. And we really want to fill their buckets and fill our buckets. And that can really minimize the problem behaviors that they might engage in to get that attention while you're trying to do other things. So if you can set aside 5-10 minutes to hang out with your kids, we're not going to place a lot of demands. I wouldn't be like badgering them about how their day was. If they're open to talking about it, that's great. But if you have one like mine who doesn't really want to talk about his day all the time, then maybe you're just playing and hanging out. But we want to do something maybe they want to do and just be together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to highlight because we're so used to it in our field, but anytime you're asking a question, those are considered demands to kids because you're expecting an answer from them. And so that's one thing. I mean, you know your kid better than anyone, so you know how to play with them and what's going to, fill them up the most. But just something that we like to kind of mention because I think as parents, we want to know how our kids' day was, or we want to know what they did, and we a lot of times we don't get to know. We don't get, what is it called, play by plays from our kids. And it's just habit, I think, for a lot of us, especially in carpool or whatever, to be like, "How was your day? What did you do? What are you doing?" Just kind of bombard them with questions or, "What do you want to do when you get home?" And I think the best thing that you can do is just to, like Lauren said, give them that undivided attention where you're not asking them a ton of questions or getting them ready for what you're going to be doing later that evening. It's just giving them undivided attention and doing something that they enjoy doing. And it can really make a huge difference because if you give them that time now, they are more likely to kind of let you do what you need to do, whether that's make dinner or whatever it might be, because you've already given them that one-on-one attention. So that can be a great way to make your afternoon less stress or more to
More
make your
smooth.
afternoon less stressful. Yeah. And strategy 2 is go over what your evening will look like with your kids. So I know I just said, don't do that right away and don't do that right away. But it's a good idea to kind of briefly go over, maybe you talked about it already, but we know that kids aren't always listening to us. So if you can tell them, like, okay, first we have to go to brother's basketball practice, and then we're going to eat dinner, and then we're going to, do all those things so they can kind of get a lay of what's happening for their evening. That can be a huge strategy of how to make your evening go a little bit smoother. Is it bath night? Talking about what's for dinner. And I think that's a good way to kind of prep them for table or sitting at the table, those kind of things. If you're serving something that they might not love, it's a good time to kind of say, like, oh, we are having meatballs, broccoli, and rice. Whatever it might be for dinner, and kind of giving them that heads up. And, it's a bath night. Honestly, in my house, I can't say it's bath night until we're going upstairs. Otherwise, I will be asked 1,000 times if we're going upstairs for bath. So
I have one of each. One needs to know as soon as possible, and the other one, yeah, if I say bath time, she's halfway undressed in the bathroom, and it's like dinner's on the table. But yeah, like Lacey said, we're still going to give them that time first before we start bombarding them with whatever's going to happen. But then just give them a brief overview, like, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is what's happening," so that they kinda know. Um, and again, like, if you have one like mine, like, he just needs to know everything. He's just a little ball of anxiety sometimes, and he wants to know exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, and is he gonna get TV time or whatever it is. Otherwise, you can see that he's just stressed out about it. So, that's kinda why I suggested that. If you have a more laid back kid, maybe you don't need to be so detailed.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps for some kids to know because, their whole day is controlled. And so if they can kind of know what might be happening, or like maybe you're just going to be telling them, like, hey, you get to play and do all these things right now. So they know it's not so controlled. And also, we've talked about these a lot, but you can always use like a visual schedule for them or draw it out. Especially if you're going to be, a lot of kids don't like to sit down and do their homework, which we have a whole different episode on. But sometimes if you can kind of lay that out for them, like, hey, we're going to work on our homework for 10 minutes, and then, you can paint or color or whatever it may be, get that TV time. It can really help. So, your family, but those are things that we know help.
Yeah, we've used ourselves and with clients. And our last strategy, this is like the quick and dirty version of this episode, but the last strategy is just help them find something to do while you're cooking or doing whatever you need to do. So you have that time with them, then you tell them what's going to happen. And it's like, okay, now I need to go cook some dinner. Why don't you play with this or this? Give them a couple choices, but help them so they're not just wandering around the house aimless, and then that could also create some problem behaviors. Um, and you can set a timer for them. I need 20 minutes to cook dinner, but in between, you can go pop in and see how they're doing. Maybe they're doing a table activity right next to you. That's really great. Um, but I think just kind of helping them and directing them if they need that can also mitigate some of those behaviors you might see.
Hmm. And I will say, like, I have a child that wants to be on top of me like all day. And so I definitely have to kind of tell her other things that she can do, and I have to give lots of reminders when when my attention's diverted from her. And a lot of times I do have to set a timer so that, she knows how long I'm going to be doing that activity. And then I kind of have it right now based on her age where I, do a certain amount of minutes of the activity, and then I'm back to playing with her for a few minutes, and then I'm back to doing whatever task is at hand. But if you have a kid like that, one thing and that can be really helpful is just to include them in those chores, like cooking or cleaning up after dinner. Um, of course, it can make a huge mess, more of a bigger mess, but at least, they're doing that's usually preferred for my child because she's doing what I'm doing. So it can be beneficial in giving them that extra attention while you're still getting what you need to do
Mostly
done.
done.
Yeah.
As done as you can with the toddler.
Now it's time for a Grace and Grit segment where we give advice to situations pertaining to topics from listeners. It's always anonymous, and if you want to write in, you can email us at graceandgritbcs@gmail.com. Hey, Grace and Grit, I tried to bond with my child when I pick him up from school, but it seems like he gets frustrated and doesn't want to share parts of his day. What would you suggest to help? Lauren?
So I totally get this. For some reason, they just don't want to talk to us all the time, but maybe instead, let him take the lead. We don't know how old he is, but maybe you just turn on music he likes in the car. Maybe when you're at home, you guys can watch a show together or do an activity that he really likes together without that pressure of telling about his day. Maybe that will just at some point get him to open up. I don't know. I feel like maybe kids just go through a phase too where they just don't want to talk, but I think it's still important to try to get those moments together. So I would just kind of let him take the lead and say, typically after school, he plops down on the couch and turns on his favorite show. Go sit and watch it with him. Or maybe he's reading a book. Go sit and read with him, or video game, whatever it is. Um, I would kind of just insert myself as much as I could into what he's doing. Surely, like, hopefully, you would know what kind of music he likes for the car ride. You can just turn that in and just sit together. But I do think it's important to not push too much because that might just push him away and be a little bit aversive and punishing for him. Sad.
Yeah, I would say, all those things that Lauren said for sure. And then specifically about the conversation part, I don't know if this will help, but I did do this with one client, where the mom was struggling with something similar. Is that after she did like a preferred activity with him that he enjoyed, like Legos or something like that, and maybe when they were getting dinner, he would usually be like sitting at the counter. And she would just talk about her day, like very naturally, and say, like, oh, I did this today and I enjoyed this part of my day. And this was something that was hard for me today. And he was a little bit older. So I feel like that's harder to do if you have like a toddler, but it can just be a good way of like modeling communication and kind of like how you might be feeling different ways throughout your day. And, in that specific case, the child did start talking um, to his mom more about like his afternoons and just kind of expanding slowly on um, what those things would be. And I think also if your child does end up starting to talk to you a lot, like to not um, be overwhelming with it
Don't get
once
too
they
excited.
do. Yeah. Just, try to be cool when they do that. And hopefully you can slowly develop it from there. So, I mean, I just think the biggest thing is attention and not saying that parents don't give their kids attention these days, but our attention is definitely pulled lots of different ways, especially with our phones and everything that we have available to us on our phones. So, if anything, I would say, like, if you just put your phone down and play with your kid and do what they want to do, a lot of times you can see a big difference in their behaviors and how your afternoon's going to go.
It's really nice that that worked so well for that mom. I love that. Really sweet. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I hope this helps somebody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. If you need help or have additional questions, you can email us at graceandgritbcs@gmail.com. We also have free resources and products on our website. Visit us at graceandgritbcs.com. Thanks so much for listening to Parenting with Grace and Grit.